Sarah thought she knew everything about her husband of 12 years, but the leather journal hidden beneath their bedroom floorboards would shatter that illusion forever. What she discovered inside would test the very foundation of their marriage and force her to confront a truth she never saw coming. It started on an ordinary Tuesday morning when the upstairs bathroom pipe burst, flooding their bedroom. As Sarah frantically moved furniture to save their belongings from the spreading water, she noticed a loose floorboard that had warped from the moisture. Curiosity got the better of her, and when she pried it up to check for further damage, her fingers brushed against something unexpected. The journal was bound in worn brown leather, its pages yellowed with time. Sarah's heart pounded as she recognized David's handwriting on the cover. Her name was written there, along with a date from 5 years ago. 5 years of secrets, hidden just beneath her feet. With trembling hands, she opened to the first page. What she read made her sink to the wet floor, the journal clutched against her chest. David hadn't just been keeping a journal. He had been documenting a desire so profound, so unexpected, that it changed everything she thought she knew about the man she married. The entries began simply enough. David wrote about watching Sarah in the mornings, how the sunlight caught her hair as she made coffee, how her laugh filled their kitchen with warmth. But as Sarah read deeper, the entries revealed something more complex. David had been dreaming of leaving their comfortable suburban life behind. Not for another woman, not for a midlife crisis, but for something Sarah had never imagined he wanted. He wanted to travel, not weekend getaways or annual vacations, but real travel. Months in remote villages in Nepal, hiking through Patagonian wilderness, teaching English in small Thai communities, living in a converted van and chasing sunsets across continents. The journal was filled with detailed plans, hand-drawn maps, photographs he had printed from travel websites, and calculations of how much money they would need to make it happen. But what broke Sarah's heart wasn't the dream itself. It was the reason David had kept it secret. In entry after entry, he wrote about his fear of disappointing her. He believed Sarah loved their predictable life too much to ever consider such an adventure. He wrote about her promotion at the accounting firm, her pride in their perfectly maintained garden, her close relationships with their suburban neighbors. He had convinced himself that asking her to abandon all of this would be selfish. The most devastating entry was dated just 3 months ago. David had written about a conversation with his colleague Mark, who had taken early retirement to sail around the world with his wife. David described the ache in his chest as Mark talked about waking up to different horizons every day. But then David wrote something that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. He had decided to give up the dream entirely. The final entries detailed David's plan to sell his collection of travel guides, cancel the subscriptions to adventure magazines he had been hiding, and focus entirely on being the husband he thought Sarah needed. He wrote about applying for a promotion that would tie him to the office for even longer hours, believing that financial security was what would make Sarah happiest. Sarah sat in the puddle of water from the burst pipe, tears streaming down her face, as she realized how completely they had both misunderstood each other. While David was hiding his dreams to protect what he thought she wanted, Sarah had been going through her own quiet crisis. The truth was, she had been feeling trapped in their routine for years, but she thought David was perfectly content with their predictable life. The irony was overwhelming. Sarah had been secretly longing for change, for adventure, for something beyond the endless cycle of work, errands, and weekend home improvement projects. She had been browsing travel blogs during her lunch breaks, imagining what it would be like to wake up somewhere new every day. But she had convinced herself that David was too comfortable, too set in his ways, to ever want such a dramatic change. When David came home that evening, he found Sarah sitting on their bed with the journal open beside her. His face went pale when he saw what she had discovered. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of years of hidden truths hung between them like a curtain. David started to apologize, to explain, to take back every dream he had written down. But Sarah stopped him with a single question that changed everything. "When do we leave?" The confusion on David's face was almost comical. Sarah stood up, took his hands in hers, and told him about her own secret longings. She talked about the travel documentaries she watched when he worked late, the language learning apps she had downloaded but never mentioned, the way she felt most alive when they took their rare trips to new places. That night, they talked until sunrise. They shared dreams they had been too afraid to voice, fears they had carried alone, and hopes they had buried under the weight of what they thought the other person needed. They realized that they had been living parallel lives, each trying to protect the other from desires they believed were incompatible with their marriage. The conversation was not without its challenges. They had to confront the practical realities of Sarah's career, their mortgage, their responsibilities. But as they talked through each obstacle, they found solutions they had never considered because they had never allowed themselves to imagine the possibility. Sarah had vacation time accumulated from years of rarely taking breaks. David's job in graphic design could be done remotely from anywhere with internet access. Their house, which they had both secretly begun to see as more of a burden than a blessing, could be rented out to cover the mortgage and provide additional travel funds. 3 months later, Sarah and David were standing at the airport, each carrying a single backpack containing everything they had decided they truly needed. The house was rented to a lovely family who promised to care for Sarah's garden. David's travel guides, no longer hidden, were packed in their luggage along with Sarah's language learning materials. But the most important thing they carried was the lesson they had learned about the danger of assumptions in marriage. They had almost lost their chance at the life they both wanted because each was so focused on being the person they thought the other needed that they forgot to be themselves. As their plane lifted off, Sarah reached for David's hand. She thought about the burst pipe that had started it all, how sometimes destruction leads to discovery. The water damage to their bedroom had cost them money and time to repair, but it had also revealed the hidden foundation of dreams that would rebuild their entire life together. Their adventure was just beginning, but the most important journey had already taken place in their own bedroom, in the space between assumption and truth, between fear and faith, between the life they thought they were supposed to want and the life they actually longed to live together.